Welcome back to another video. In this one, we're going to be hopping in the boat with Joel Nelson, and he is going to demonstrate how to catch fish on 3 different tactics. And these are tactics that are all around fish catching tactics, whether you're chasing walleyes, bass, pike, panfish, anything in between. These are presentations that'll just go out and straight up catch fish for you. So without further ado, let's jump right into the first tactic.
Oh, there is under. Ready?
Yep.
Oh, that's how bobber fishing should work. I tell you, if you're fishing just to catch fish, you don't care what species necessarily, and you're just after a good time, rigging up with a bobber and live bait, it's just the way to be, because I don't even know what this fish is. We saw a great pack of fish. Oh, it's a nice walleye. There we go. Wow, pretty fish. Yeah, we just pulled up on these fish. We saw them on side imaging and didn't know what they were. Pretty good pot of fish. Live bait, just about anything right now this time of year is gonna eat it. We've just got a simple jig, a small tungsten jig. It's a real streamlined approach. I'm gonna show you a lot more about the whole technique later, but if you're trying to get bit, bobbers are where it's at. Let's box this guy. You know, there's so many spots that you can really fish with slip bobbers. You're not limited like you are with so many other presentations. That's a nice little guy. Really, you can fish as shallow as 3 feet of water, or however long your leader length is. And in this situation, that's where I've got about 3 feet. But you can fish down to 20 some, 30 some feet of water if that's where the fish are. So there's not a lot of places that you can't reach. And that could be places like we're fishing now. It's just the end of an underwater point. It could be a submerged weed bed or any weed break. It could be a shallow rock pile that fish are moving up to at the evening hours. Or it could be some deep scattered rock like we saw fish just kind of generally roaming across on side imaging. So the beauty of bobbers is that you're not limited, and it's such a versatile technique, not just from the depths you can fish, but the presentations. If I want, I can tip that with a crawler. We can fish minnows earlier in the season. Later in the season, if we want some larger bait to kind of mimic, you know, prey and forage, that's what we'll do. So there's not much more versatile in terms of fishing than a bobber setup. If I was gonna set up a bobber rod, I'd do it this way almost every time. And it first off starts with a pretty simple lead. And this one's a little bit long. You can go shorter, you can go 18 to 36 inches, somewhere in there. But on the business end, I almost always have a jig. And lately it's been this tungsten short shank jig, and there's a lot of positive attributes to a tungsten jig here, especially as live scope and other forward-facing technologies see more open water fish getting thrown at. A really small profile is super important, but you also need the weight, because remember, this business end of the hook really has to pull all of the rig down through the slip bobber. So you need it small, but you need it heavy, and you couldn't have dialed up a more perfect situation for tungsten than a slip bobber setup. So tungsten jig of your choice. I'm using a short shank, and then you move up to a simple swivel. And as you can see, I didn't even get real cute in trimming it down. I just tie in a basic barrel swivel, and then from there I add another weight, a little slip weight. And that's important because you've got the jig to help drag it down, but this 1/8 ounce or so, you can even go up to a 1/4 ounce, really helps pull the whole rig and all that line when you're slip bobbering in deeper than, let's say, 10 feet of water. So if you're throwing slip bobbers out at the edge of a weed line or out on a deep rock pile, whether you're using forward facing or not, this little slip weight is a really important part of it. This sinker really helps seal the deal. So then we move up to the bobber itself, and the bobber is important because you really need something that's big in my estimation, especially if you're fishing for predator species. I like a bigger bobber because a lot of times I'm pitching in maybe rippling water. Sometimes if I'm near weed cover or anything like that, it's really easy for these things to hide, and the bigger the bobber, the more visible it's gonna be to you, and the easier, no matter the weather conditions, no matter the light levels, you're gonna be able to see this thing taking a dunk. And then we've obviously got the simple bead as well as the bobber stop itself. So let me pull a little line out here. I'm gonna show you something about my bobber stops. I don't mind keeping it, let's say, a little unclean. So when I say unclean, I mean I've got all this tag end hanging out, and A lot of people that I've fished with have been like, well, why wouldn't you trim that up? Why wouldn't you make that more compact? Couple reasons in my estimation. If you're having a hard time casting, well then throw this advice out. But as long as your whole rig is casting out fairly well, I would make sure to leave your ends long and untrimmed for these reasons. First off, I like that little bit of extra tag to be able to periodically tighten and adjust it. These will get loose over time. As you're working with it, it's going to start to slip up and down. That's where you'll need an occasional retightening. Well, that's almost impossible to do once you trim those tag ends too close. The next reason is sometimes you'll get just a little bit of clumpiness that goes on here, and that always reassures the fact that your individual bead is not going to come and slip on over the top of that bobber stop. If that happens, then your bait lays on bottom and fish don't really see it, so kind of pointless there. The other thing I really like is the more tag end I have, the more visible it is out on the water. So I can see that tag end dropping its way to the top of the bobber. I know if this thing stops 3 feet short of the bobber, I've got a fish that's already come up and probably eaten it in kind of mid water column. So just a couple reasons why I like to keep these a little long, and I will trim them if it's a casting consideration. I really need to make bomb casts, but when I can keep them long, I do. So then I'm running just a basic kind of 10-foot or 10-pound monofilament line. You know, fluorocarbon can be a trickier deal because fluorocarbon can sink, and if it sinks below the bobber before it has a chance to come up and over and down and get kind of pulled through, that makes it just harder to manage when that line sinks. So monofilament if you can. For me, braid works fine as well. Some bobber stops slip a little too well in braid, so you got to be a little careful about that. But as far as the rest of the rig, the rod and the reel, rod is really important. You want something with a little bit softer tip, because remember when you're casting out a certain distance and then that bobber's going straight down. So you've got a big bow in the line, a self-created bow in the line. To take that bow out, you need two things from a rod. You need length and you need a softer tip. If it's too stiff throughout, one of the things you'll start to do is you'll start to reel down to be able to set the hook, and the fish will start to feel that resistance and they can drop the lure. So even with live bait that happens. The length of the rod is excellent because not only does it help your casting distance and your casting ability, because again we've got a pretty long lead down from the swivel to the jig, that long length helps line management, and then you can really offer a big sweeping hook set, which is super excellent to get fish pinned up and to keep them that way. So this one is an Avid Walleye series from St. Croix. It's a 7'3" medium, extra fast action. Again, extra fast at the tip. I go even longer. I've got some bobber rods that are 8 foot, 8'6". It's typically not an issue if you've got boat storage for it to run it that way. And then I've got a 7 series reel. That's a new reel that's out, and this is a 3000 size model. It is the GS series, and I tell you, it's been really good to me because I like that bigger spool. I like that larger arbor. It really helps your casting distance, and it makes line management just that much easier because we're dealing with mono a lot of times. So for me, this is really the ultimate bobber rod setup, 7'3" and longer with a 7 3000 series reel. This one is a GS.
All right, now Joel's gonna demonstrate another presentation. What's cool about this one is it's really not very similar to a bobber, but once again, it catches just about everything in the lake.
Oh yeah, another walleye. Well, if there was another technique that just plain catches fish, it's a jig and paddle tail. I tell you what, if you're looking for a combination that's just gonna catch anything, walleyes, bass, pike, a simple paddle tail like we've got here in this Eye Candy series, it's a 4-incher, and this stand-up tungsten jig are a great combination because I can fish a lot of different things, right? Remember, versatility is what we're after when we're just trying to catch some fish. We're trying to catch things that'll be on weeds, on rock edges, on sand. You're looking for something that works in a variety of depths and situations, and what better than a jig and a plastic, especially that jig and paddle tail, to be able to get it done. So let's throw this one back. Here we go. And as I look at the presentation, I start to think about what's enticing. And first and foremost, I can make that jig color anything I want, right? If I'm fishing stained water, I can go something really bright, really attracts fish's attention. Or something like today, it's a little more subdued, kind of golden black and real clear water like we've got, with this very natural color, very minnow-shaped, minnow look and feel. But the paddle tail has a lot going for it because of the vibration that it kicks out, the enticing tail action. I can free swim the thing, you know, just get it near bottom and just kind of slow roll it back to me. I can fish it a little bit like a puppet minnow where I kind of rip it a little bit. Or even on the edges of weeds, kind of pull it along, troll it, and kind of rip it through the weeds, almost jig troll with it. So there's endless combinations in ways that you can rig it from a colors perspective, weight perspective, endless ways in the depth range in which you can fish it, and endless ways in the techniques that you can go after different species of fish to make it work. So if I had to name another one that was just a top choice to catch anything on a day where you just want to get bit, man, Jig and Paddle Tail is the way to go.
Yeah, you know what? There's a lot of better rest.
Remember how I was talking? This is a catch anything kind of bait. We go from walleyes and all the stuff we're doing, and eventually a nice bass just grabs it. So you can see a bait like this. We talked about how it casts off a lot of vibration. There's the visual component to it and how it looks. But that fish just absolutely smashed it. And all it was doing was free swimming it. So again, if it gets a little bit deeper, I let it sink a little more. I reel a little slower up against the reed edges. I have kind of a faster retrieve. And a fish like this just doesn't think twice. It comes past it, it's just gonna reach out and grab it. So again, if you're trying to find a catch anything kind of bait, and you're out for a day of fishing where you're just looking to put a bend in the rod, jigging an eye candy paddle tail.
All right, now the third and final presentation. Once again, it's a tactic that is nothing like the first two tactics, but it's just an all-around great fish catcher.
Oh, there we go, I'm on. Turn that off here.
That didn't take very long, Joel.
It's so funny, you know, again, today we're out just having a ball, just trying to catch whatever's biting, and if the goal is to just put a bend in the rod, we're doing a pretty good job today. I don't even know what this thing is. But this technique is a little bit different than what we have been doing. We're just pulling crankbaits.
There's a walleye.
Oh my God, no kidding, look at that thing.
Oops. I almost knocked it off.
That's a good walleye. Look at that thing. So this is a Northland rumble shiner, and it's a great bait, and it's really an overlooked bait. When we're starting to talk about catching fish on weed edges, we're looking on kind of rock breaks, anything there's a little bit of a steep break to it. I love this bait because it gets down kind of to those mid-depth levels. This one's gonna dive down a couple feet, and then any pause, any kind of a rip in the rod, it's just gonna kind of sit right in their face. And that walleye was sitting kind of right on the tip of a little sharp break that we got. We got weeds off to the one side, we got rock off the other edge. And it's just a perfect place to catch a fish like this. But quite honestly, I thought that was gonna be a pike. It could have easily been a bass. But the fact that it's a really nice walleye, man, I'll take that every day. I wonder what she measures.
I bet she's 20. My sophisticated bump board. 19 and a half almost. Oh, it's 20.
20?
Right on the button.
Yeah, catching 20-inch walleyes. Just looking to put a bend in the rod. That's been a pretty good day. We're getting some peaks of sun. Oh, I just love this, man. Catching fish. Woo! Down she goes. Let's do it again.
Got another one, Joel.
Here we go again, right? Tell you what, I'm gonna try to drop this right in spot lock. Fight this fish here. Yeah, again, have no idea what this fish is. Pulling along that same break as that walleye. I wonder what we've got. Oh, just a little pike. Look at that. Ooh, he's spunky. Again though, today is about putting fish in the boat. If we're trying to have fun, stuff like this, I don't care, right? It's a good time. And the coolest part about a bait like this, you see I'm fishing it on a spinning rod. A lot of people would say, man, why aren't you using the bait casters? Why don't you have the line counters out? And there's a lot of times where I'm dedicated crankbait fishing. That's exactly what I would be doing. But on a day like today, we're just trying to troll along a break line for whatever's gonna eat, 20-inch walleyes or smaller pike. We're trying to be able to be versatile. And spinning rods are just the way to go with that, because I can switch from, you know, pulling along this break and catching fish. It's doing just fine. I don't need to know exactly how much line I've got out the back to be able to get bit this way. But the cool part is like, let's say I roll up on a nice piece of structure, or I see like this reed point out in front of me. I'm like, well, heck, why wouldn't I just pick up the rod and throw at that? So it gives me a lot of flexibility, a lot of options and opportunity. Oh, I thought I was hooked up again. I just have some weeds. So there you have it. If you're trying to get bit, the 3 ways that I would go about it, and it doesn't matter where you're fishing or what kind of lake you're at. If you're just trying to catch a lot of different species, have a great day on the water. Bobbers are pretty hard to beat, especially with live bait, especially when the conditions call for it, when things are tough, when fish are maybe a little finicky. Whether you're talking about walleyes or bass or pike, everything's gonna eat live bait on the end of a slip bobber. Quickly we transitioned into jigs and paddle tails, a little more active technique when you've got a little bit lower ceiling. You know, you're not bluebird day kind of fishing, you're fishing in overcast conditions and fish are really snapping. Jigs and paddle tails, awesome. And then to cap it off, yeah, pull some crankbaits around the lake and see what's gonna eat them. These rumble shiners are wonderful for that. You know, I invite you to fish them a little more, and not just trolling like we're doing, but casting like I was talking about. So there you have it. 3 great ways to get bit, no matter where you're fishing, to catch a lot of different species.
Well, that's all we got for you in this video. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Thanks to Joel Nelson for sharing a bunch of good tips and demonstrating how to catch just about anything in the lake. And if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, make sure to hit that little red subscribe button down below, because we have a lot more awesome content coming in the future. And until then, we will see you in the next one.